at 6:09, and I'm going to start recording. Thanks everybody for coming. I'm going to quickly share this agenda on my screen, which I think it's just going to help us focus a little bit better. So let me share my screen. It's a short agenda. Just as a reminder, it's the budget meeting. It's the fourth one we're having. So we're just really focusing on the budget, but I will entertain any changes to the agenda if anybody has any at this time. Peter. Can't motion change
necessarily, but I wanted to ask about the previous minutes because there were several people whose names were not complete.
Sure. If you want, at the end, I can handle that with you. There's no executive session, Peter, so we'll just do that together.
Okay, thanks.
Does anybody have anything else? Nope, I'm not seeing any hands raised, or maybe that's just my poor vision. But first, members of the public. Are there any members of the public that wish to share anything outside of this? I'm not seeing any. And again, raise your hand feature. And then board continuity. I am going to stop my screen share. And I'm going to thank Jude Robinson, who wasn't at our last meeting, for her service on the board. Jude came in at a really difficult time when she could have been focusing on many other things during COVID, but she chose to help our school and the school community. So thank you very much, Jude, for coming on. We're going to miss you. You're a great asset to the board, but I know that the school down the hill is going to enjoy your services too. But with that, we do have some people that have been interested in serving. They've written myself, they've written Jeremy. They're on the fence. I dare not mention their names in public, but there are people interested, and they're going to be talking to Forrest and maybe reach out to board members to talk about the commitment. So I think we'll have some parties running, which is great. And then of course we have Selena and Jeremy running. Jeremy is signed up to run for the 3-year term in place of Jude. And Selena, I think you're signed up for the 1-year term, correct? And so with that, we're going to go to the budget, but I think the way we're going to work this is through the warning. Since it's a small group and there aren't many members of the public on, I don't think we need to roll through the presentation again. We've all seen it like 3 or 4 times. We've had it in our inboxes. So what I'm going to do is just pull up the budget warning. It's in your inbox too. If you want to pull it up on your own screen, if you can't see my screen. But let me share my screen so everybody at home can see it. Okay. I'll try and make it as big as possible. So if anybody has a question, we'll take them one article at a time. And I'm going to skip Article 4 because that's the most difficult, and we'll come back to it. So in general, this is what we did for wording last year at the top, which basically discusses the fact that we're in a pandemic and that we're going to have an Australian ballot vote. Forrest, Bill, and Dan helped me review the dates and the text. So thank you for that. But then, of course, we're going to have an article to elect 1 school director for a 3-year term, and then elect 2 school directors for 1-year terms. That one ending in 2023, and this one in 2025. That's pretty standard. Then, of course, to compensate the directors of the school district $500 each. Article 3 is to see if the voters of the town or school district will authorize the school directors to borrow in anticipation of revenue. That is simply because I forget the reason. Lori could probably explain it, but it's because we don't have the money until after the school year starts, I think, or before the school year starts. Is that correct, Lori?
It's because our budget starts on July 1st and we don't collect taxes until October.
Correct.
Exactly right.
So I'll skip this. We'll come back to Article 4. So Article 5 is, Dan, you have something to say?
Yeah, I was wondering about Article 2.
shouldn't that say, now maybe this is exactly what from previous years, but shouldn't it see if the voters will vote to compensate the directors of the school board? If we've done it this way in the past, that's fine, but it seems like we're asking a question. If you just took the words from last year, that's fine. We'll leave it like that.
I did it in the articles, but I'll double check. Let me see. Let me pause my screen here and I'll double check what you sent from last year, Dan.
Oh, right. That was a screenshot. Yeah, or well, we
To
don't have to do it
compensate the
now, but-
directors of the Marlboro School District $500. Is that what I have?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, that's exactly what we had last year.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Any others on Articles 1 to 3? So skipping 4, to see if the voters of the school district will authorize the school district to spend any grants or other funds received by the district. That's pretty standard and pretty clear. Anything we apply for, we're going to want to either spend, especially if it's a one-time grant. Article 6 is the new one. If you remember last June, we ran into a little snafu with COVID that we hope to never see again, which is what to do with funds should we have to pay down debts or anything like that from a surplus. So right now we're in Article 6. We're going to ask permission of the town to allow the board to make the decision, either spend it or put it in reserves or pay it back. And this is the wording that Bill got me from, I think it was Lori. Did you give this wording? Okay. And any questions on those articles before we take on Article 4?
Should there be a period after the word fund in Article 6?
Got it. And I guess housekeeping wise, Selena, when we're all done with this tonight, I was going to send it to you PDFing and then everybody could sign it at the bottom using your e-signing form. Thank you. Okay, so Article 4, and this is where we're going to start talking about numbers and plugging them in. Shall the voters of the Marlboro School District approve the school board to expend, and I'm going to need, Lori, the final number to plug in here. Do you have that up on your screen? I'm assuming you do. You're muted, Lori.
All right, so I do have the final number. It did change a little bit since the other draft, which I mentioned in my email, but it's $3,714,000.
Even?
Yeah, I made it even.
That's good. No change.
Yeah.
And 1 cent, maybe we can add. Okay, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of
$25,906.
per equalized pupil.
Correct.
This projected spending per equalized pupil is what
20
percent more?
Sorry, 21.08% more than the previous year.
Okay. All right. Do we want to do the point, or do we have to do the point, or can we just do 21 since it's less than 5?
Typically, they go out the other. Yeah.
Okay. Now we can get into the discussion on the changes, and we can look at Wayne's document, or we could give control to Lori if people want to dig into charts and graphs. But I think that we could probably focus on the changes from the last version of the budget to this one. And I think I'd pass to Lori for that. So Lori, do you want to share your screen?
Actually, I was going to pass to Wayne. I think he has it all in that document, right?
Wayne's got it all in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I will stop my share, Wayne, and give it to you.
Want to pull up the presentation?
Yeah, I'm going to make you a, can you share or not? I don't know if you can.
You should be able to share in Zoom.
Doug, I noticed we have a member of the public here. Kate Milliken is here. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Thanks for joining, Kate.
Hey, Doug, if you just want to share it, it really is only 3 slides, so,
Okay.
and
Let's
it's,
see if
you
I
know,
can pull it up.
it's just a couple of really quick, things to point out.
Well, I probably won't be able to get it into that nice format that you get it in. Let's see. You wanted to start with slide 13?
Yes, yes, please.
It's hard to share the screen in slideshow mode. Okay. There we go.
Yeah, so that's great. I just wanted to point this out. This is where we landed for our staffing, for our classrooms. Nothing's changed since the last time. And, again, 101 students, and our FTEs are, very close to what we are currently, what we currently have at the school right now. So you can move right to the next slide, Doug. There's just been a couple little changes. I know you talked about last time about increasing Spanish. One of the things that we did make a change on after talking to a couple of staff is that library will no longer do after school, but the counselor will. And so we've increased their hours to support that after school time, and we reduced the library time due to not doing the after school program. That's really been the only changes that we've seen so far. The only other change I think that we added was Lori updated the tech school, was it? The tech school rate. So again, it's a small amount, and I think we're looking at about $7,000 more this budget than it was last budget. So not too many changes. And then the last piece, the last slide that we have here is I just wanted to just point out some of the strategic things that we're doing really well, which is we're utilizing this high yield of FY23 to not only support this year's budget, so we're delaying some building maintenance, but we're also setting us up for some support for FY24. And we're doing that, with a considerable amount of money, as to $260,000. I think the only discussion that we need to have is around the bus, whether potentially purchase, the bus that we currently have that we've leased outright, or to lease 2 buses. And there's just a bunch of lease options. And again, if you've seen all the rates, I think, Dan's seen them all. They're all pretty reasonable. So that's just something to discuss. And I think the only thing that would change really if we decided to purchase as opposed to lease would be that placeholder on capital would go down, and we would probably replace it with the expense of the bus. But either way, this is a small decision, because we can essentially make it sort of any time with the flexibility that we have in this budget. So that's the last thing I wanted to. One other thing, but I wanted to point this out. And then the one other thing is, Lori and I did start to look at FY24 already, just to do a little sneak peek, because we know that the yield is going to go down. This is a one-time yield, which is it's really helping us out during COVID. So we did look at FY24, and we are looking at over $2, but it is not at the 222 that we've seen in the past. That some of these savings are really supporting that FY24 already. So I think we did a really nice job with utilizing this high yield to support 3 years essentially. That's all I have.
Thank you, Wayne. Does anybody have any questions for Wayne on these changes? Dan?
I have a question about no, not about this. It's when we get to the budget. I'll wait till we get to the figures.
Okay. Anybody else?
I was trying to follow what you were saying, Wayne, about the switch from library to the counselor.
Yeah.
And not that position, and that was based on the after school. Is that that's the only shift? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the only shift.
Does that make the counselor position kind of more easy to staff and maintain and the library more difficult? Or do you not think it really, that's relevant in this case? Or is it something you're thinking about? I don't know.
Oh, no, it was actually the staff coming to me and one staff member saying, librarian saying, hey, I really enjoy the laughter, but it leads to a really long day. And then saying, oh, let me ask around, and then going to the counselor who's already doing laughter and asking her if she would like to continue to do laughter next year. She's quite handy and crafty, and she loves it. So she would like to pick it up. So it's really 2 staff members. It's a request from staff. And so we're just representing that here. So, yeah. Hey, Doug, you're muted.
Talking to myself over here.
It was-
I basically just said, any other questions for Wayne before we pull up the actual numbers and see what we're going to footnote in this town report? No? Okay. Lori, could you take control for your spreadsheet? Because I think that that's going to be really hard for me to share.
I can try. Yeah, let's see what I can do. You're going to have to give me screen sharing or make me the host.
Okay. I'll give you host.
Okay,
And then you have to give it back.
I promise. I don't want it. All right, here we go. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Or do you want me to increase the, let me just see. I always, yeah, here we go. All right. I gotta move you guys around off my screen here. Okay, so I don't know if there are questions on revenues at all. Before we move on to expenses, anybody have any questions? I don't typically put notes on revenues, but I'm happy to. And that's why I added the row numbers, because anywhere that I can look at this budget. I have been looking at this budget for a while now, and things pop out at me, but they may not be the same things that, you know your voters. What are they going to sort of fixate on? So. Anything for revenues? Going once. Okay. Down, so now we're into pre-K. This is the pre-K area here. I do have some notes. I have FTEs, which I'm assuming you want me to leave in. I may not have I need to update oh no, I think I did. I'll leave the FTEs in there, and then I'm not sure if anything jumps out at anybody that I don't have a note on already.
Dan's got a question, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, this has to do with all of the staff expenses and faculty expenses. Selena and I just got the proposal from the union today, and I just want to verify that Laura, you and Bill have somehow accommodated at least a guess as to what the
Dan,
total
we're
cost-
not there yet.
Well, every one of these has teachers in
Yeah,
it.
but we're not there yet.
Right. So the salary lines are all based on contracts right now and moving a step, because that's typical. That happens every year. There's another line item that has some money in it under the board expenses that is for negotiations.
And you feel comfortable that that is going to be added?
I haven't seen the proposal, but I'm comfortable based on past increases, we'll say.
And how about you, Bill? Because I think Bill has seen that.
Is Bill still on?
I don't think Bill's responding.
Well, we can deal with this later. I think Selena would like not to do this now, but I just want to make sure that we have adequate number in there.
Okay,
I think maybe, Dan, if you wish, you could maybe make a motion to enter executive session if you want to talk contracts, but that would probably be the best.
How about
thing to do.
now?
There we go, Bill.
The Bill's here.
No?
Yep, we can hear you. Oh, but Bill
Wayne-
can hear us.
Wayne has something to add, I think, but Bill, go ahead if you want to respond to Dan when you're done, when Wayne's done.
I think Bill dropped off now.
Just real quick, when we look at FY22 and FY23 and the teacher salaries, those are not the actual salaries that teachers are going to get, because we were in negotiations through that process. So just to keep that in mind as we look at it. So for example, we got direct instruction. What we budgeted for was 68, and now we're looking at 72 for the preschool teacher. Those are actually, they're a year behind because of negotiations. And then there's that line item up under the school board that has projected increases for teachers that we can discuss, Dan, about whether that is whether the board feels like that's an appropriate amount of money. So just, it may come up on at some point, but just remember that those budget, those salaries are a year behind what they actually is.
And Bill is texting me right now, Dan, which makes sense, which is that basically what we did last year. You budget based on the history. And when the negotiations are negotiated, that's what happens. They're settled.
Maybe we should have a footnote beside each of the salaries, just to say that, just exactly what you said a minute ago, Lori, which is that this is based on whatever. And then I think maybe I like your idea, Doug. Maybe when we get down to the bottom, if Bill feels it's appropriate, then maybe we should go into a executive session just to discuss that number that's budget.
Yeah, well, if you guys have to update the board too, because you and Selena have been talking, and the three of us, me, myself, and Jude and Jeremy have not been updated on that. So we can do that afterwards. But I do think that, a footnote would just have to be there every year anyway, Dan, because we're now, negotiating on a timeline where it's likely it might not be finalized by the time we're in budget. And Bill is saying that that's common.
Right, although I will say this, though, that if we enter into a multi-year contract, then that footnote would only be there during the years when we are in negotiation. And I still think it would be an interesting thing for people looking at this budget to know that, these numbers are just, the negotiations haven't been completed yet.
Well, I think they know that for the overall budget, because once the yield changes again and their tax rate either goes down or up based on what the state's done, everything we've said doesn't really make sense. But in terms of spending, I agree on that point, at least, that it's gonna shift, and what they're gonna see as actual next year could be different. But with that, any other questions? Lori's got her hand up.
I just wanted to also say that, we can put a note at the bottom. I think that's fine. I don't know that every salary line needs to have an asterisk there, but a note on the bottom. It is very common to go to the voters before negotiations are complete. That happens more often than not. And I think that there is some flexibility in this budget. If there is an issue with that number not being quite right, maybe you don't put as much into capital, right? Your voters are not voting a line item budget. They are voting on the total. So I do think you have some moves you can make.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. So
does anybody see any percentages maybe that might need some qualifications that aren't qualified in this section?
Really, the only thing people like voters go for is anything over like 20%. That's when they kind of go, hey, what's that? People don't really pay attention. And so this is what my perception is they don't go line item by line item. They look at the percentage increases on the far right and they're like, what's gone up a lot? And that's what they
Now,
focus
Lori,
on.
when you give this to the auditors, is the notes column going to be there, or is it going to be just the J column that we're looking at right now?
I can give it to them any way you desire me to give it to them. I believe last year the notes were in the annual report.
Oh, okay, that's great.
Unless they
Thanks.
took them out. I gave it to them just as that you're seeing it here.
Well, then I guess what I'll ask the board to do rather than go line by line here is to simply look at the document that Lori shared, look at the notes columns. If you want qualifications, we can finesse those individually with Lori. And I think everybody can have a chance to review it and add things if they need qualifications. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
All right, so I'll stop sharing then, or do you want me to keep going?
No, I think that's fine. I think we can stop sharing and then just open it up to general questions.
Okay. And let me see, I gotta give you hosting back. How do I do that again? Make the host. All right, you're back in control.
Right. Are we ready to motion the budget, or are people not feeling comfortable with the changes that we've just discussed?
I'm comfortable. I just wanted to ask a quick question to Wayne about preschool numbers for next year. And if it looks like, are we just planning on Marlboro students again next year? Just thinking tuition dollars.
I really don't know. I think we'll know more in the springtime, and it all depends upon what direction this pandemic goes in. I mean, if we're continually still in this current state, I would say that it's probably only going to be Marlboro students. You know, if it changes for the better, I would very much like to open our program to out of district students. So we'll probably know a lot more by the time we do open house sometime around May.
No, that's fair. I just didn't know how many kids you had, like even just in the Marlboro, on the Marlboro list. How many kids we were looking at for next year preschool?
Yeah, it's a little bit challenging too, because what we found is during the pandemic, families are a little bit more apprehensive about sending their 3-year-old into a school. They'd rather just keep them home. So that's been part of it as well too. Is I have a you know, it's a very rough number as to what we'll have. You know, so I forget what I projected for students. Let's see, 15, and we'll just see where that ends up. It's again, we never know with preschool students, and adding a pandemic on top of it all just makes it challenging. But hopefully we will. Hopefully we'll be able to offer our program to students outside of here and feel safe and comfortable to be able to do so.
Well, we have the preschool teacher, sort of. I don't know if she wants to talk about it. She may
Yeah,
be
Patty, what do you think?
listening. You don't have to, Patty, but we were asking about numbers. Selena was asking about numbers. I don't know if you got your ear to the ground about where folks are in the pandemic, and are they where you think next, year they're going to be where they are this year or the last year?
I agree with Wayne that preschool parents are generally more cautious. For some of them, it's their first little one to go out into the world, and it's been a very sort of cautious time for them, a scary time for them, keeping their kids out for weeks at a time and then feeling okay and then pulling them back out. Yeah, so I would go with Wayne, just hold your hat and see for the ride, see what happens.
Yeah, thanks.
But I hope for bigger numbers, bigger class.
Mm.
Be nice.
Mhm.
Along that same vein, can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
I know that at the board level, maybe Doug knows the answer to this one, or Bill, wherever he went. There was some conversation about shared.
Here.
Bill's
here.
Oh, hi, Bill. I just see a W. with some like tuition stuff going around through the supervisory union, if that was going to affect us for next year, if we thought, or if that was going to go out to 2024. I couldn't remember what year that started.
No money will exchange hands if that goes forth.
Okay.
In the intra SU choice.
But it could potentially for us for 7th and 8th grade, correct? If Dover or Wardsboro students come to us?
Right, and that exists now.
Right. I didn't know if we were thinking along that vein at all for next year, or if like, because of, I mean, I know who knows what's happening in 5 minutes. I feel like nothing is consistent right now. But if that was just, something that was on the back burner to think about, like reaching out to Matt or Tammy to just say, hey, your 6th graders, if they're interested, if you want to come check us out for next year. No, this is what we're planning on. I don't know, just a thought. Not that I'm, not that it's going to change drastically our budget as far as revenue goes, but, and that shouldn't change our staffing either, but just throwing it out there. It'd just be fun to have a bigger crew in the middle school.
Do we lose Bill again? I think so.
Here, Bill's
Oh, he's
here.
here.
Bill's here.
Okay. I guess, Selena, was that a question, or were you just making a statement to hopefully get Bill to reach out?
I think, well, no, I think what Selena is saying is that we have mentioned, and actually I haven't mentioned, but Wayne has been very particular about the importance of reaching out to Wardsboro and Dover in general for 5th and 6th grade interaction, so that the comfort level of 7th grade just becomes a norm. And I would already compliment Wayne and Jesslyn for having done that in September with the Wardsboro 5th and 6th graders, the Dover 5th and 6th graders, and the Marlboro 5th and 6th graders traveling over to Leland and Gray to work on the ropes course. So I think that's part of the process. I know that's in Wayne's thinking. I know it's in Jesslyn's thinking. So I think that Selena's question is perfect. And I think that your leader is following up on that.
Great. Okay, any other questions before we motion the budget?
I just want to say thank you to Bill, Lori, and Wayne. This was a lot, and there was a lot of moving numbers, and there will continue to be moving numbers, as we know. But thank you for all of your work on this. And I feel really good feeling like this is a projection, like we're looking ahead of 2023. We're not just doing a very small one-year thing. I feel good about looking out ahead and planning for the future, not just for next year. So thank you for getting your crystal ball polished as best you can.
Thanks, Selena. Now remind me, maybe Peter's been to many of these. Do we have to read the entire article as part of the motion? And if so, does somebody want to take that on? I'll put it up on screen.
Golly, I don't know.
Yeah, you should absolutely read Article 4.
Yes, I've got it up on screen.
So I'll
And-
make a motion for Article 4 to be listed in the warning that will state, shall the voters of the Marlboro School District approve the school board to expend $3,714,000, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $25,906 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 21.08% more than spending for the current year.
Second it.
Seconded by Dan. Peter, I've got it on screen, but I'll put it in your inbox too. Any discussion before we call the question? No? All right, then I will say all those in favor, say aye. And put your hand up too, I guess, thumbs up.
Aye.
Hi.
It looks like the ayes have it. All right. So now it goes to the voters. And as I have my screen up, I am going to, well, I guess first say thank you again, yeah, to Wayne and Lori and Bill, because this was a big shepherding process this year. And just all the help, I think too, from the faculty, as we were talking about things and moving forward. You know, I don't think we talked directly with them, but they definitely spoke through Wayne on needs. And, you know, I hope they feel supported by this budget. So we are going to have an informational session. I think Jude probably was the only vote for the day before, but Jude, after talking to Forrest, I don't think we can do that. I think we need space between the actual, you know, day of voting, and because there's people that might miss the information meeting that plan on attending, and then they don't have their answers, because I know that I'm not going to be up on Tuesday at 6 o'clock answering questions from voters. But I think that we need space for those questions to come in after the meeting for people to digest things. So I think we're going to have to do it on Tuesday. But the good news is that Wayne has a meeting with the community center folks the following Saturday. So there'll be the Tuesday option. And then the Saturday option. Wayne, you have your hand raised. Did that change?
Yeah, it did. I'm going to be on the 19th.
The 19th. So
Yes,
preceding. Oh, that's good.
Yep.
You're preceding. See, the thing is, we can't do the 19th because it's not 10 days out. I
Yep.
tried to get nitpicky with the law and said, well, technically business days, if we count 10 business days, and they were like, no, it's actual days. so they shot me down. I wanted to have it the week prior, but it's winter break and people are going to be away and or traveling. So, you know, I don't think every board member needs to be there. I know Dan and I will be there. Wayne will be there. So if you can't make it, you know, don't worry about it. It's just information session and we just answer questions. So, but if you can, the more the merrier. So that's going to be Tuesday, February 22nd at 6 on Zoom. Any questions on that? Comments, queries? No, I don't see any hands
Is the
raised.
select board, do you know, they usually do a thing. Is this at the same? Are we
We were
piggybacking
gonna-
this, or are we doing our own thing?
They do their own thing. They're
Okay.
going to be the night after,
Gotcha.
after us. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, I'm really bummed about the winter break thing, but whatever. Can't change the law.
Well, and I think Doug, you and I talked about, you know, if we're just getting absolutely bombarded with questions and Wayne's, the fact that Wayne, you're before this meeting means that there's really not a chance to follow up. We can hold another meeting if we decide we want to. It could be, you know, anytime, it could even be the night before people vote. If there are a lot of questions and people feeling frustrated, my suggestion is we just make ourselves available.
It went pretty smoothly last year. We had like 50 people on, and it was the same time the week before. So I think that any questions that come in, Dan, we'd probably just be able to handle over email and be clear, because the information session was recorded. That's the other thing, is that it's going to be recorded and Forrest is going to push it out, and people wouldn't have time to even watch that if it's the day before. So, so I don't know. I mean, Dan, you could have one. You could stand, you can host your own if you want the day before, but I don't think I can handle 2 or 3. That'll be 3, I guess.
Yeah, well, you know, I guess I think the only issue is last year we were proposing a tax rate drop of, you know, 30 cents. And this year we're proposing a tax rate increase of 30 cents. And you know, there may be questions that people have. And I feel like unless we answer those, you know, with the necessary amount of time spent doing it, that it's not fair to ask people to vote.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's
Understand.
you're getting to my sort of second point here is, when do we start sharing information? Because we can share stuff in advance. I'd like to push, the director's report's finalized. It's going to the auditors once we give them this warning and the numbers. I'd I'd like to push this out over Front Porch Forum when they give us the go-ahead, the director's report, as well as the warning and the information about the information meeting. But they'll have plenty of time to ask questions. I mean, almost a month if we get that in their hands. So I don't know, Dan, we can publish anytime we want. We don't have to wait for the auditors, right? We can send our stuff
I
out
have a
slowly.
question.
Yeah, Selena?
Wayne, this is a question for Wayne. Wayne, how hard is it to have to add people to like the website management? I'm wondering about the board having a spot on the school website, because that's a place that we could post the budget information and the director's report and, you know, other things. Like we could post a link to the recordings of the Zooms, and we can post like the warnings, like, you know, rather than relying on social media posts. It feels more official to have like our own spot on our school webpage. And if that's something that's easy to do, Wayne, I'd like to talk to you about that and see if we can make that happen. I'm happy to do it. I just don't know how hard it is.
Selena, can I pause that thought to just forgive myself again for keeping Lori here? Does anybody need Lori? Because I feel like it's the best thank you we can give her is to say, go enjoy your evening. Nope.
No,
All right,
log
Lori,
off,
you have
Lori.
a
Go
good
pour
night.
yourself a glass of wine.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Okay. But Selena, that is a great point. And I think even not school board, but like almost just school budget information, just a tab that says school budget information. And then we have the director's report, the narrative, the warning, and then the actual budget that they can dig into, and Wayne's presentation.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. It's you know, it's a Google site, so it's very easy to work around. If somebody just wants to send me a list of exactly what you want on your section of the school board, you know, page, I'm happy to do that, and then you can just send folks to that spot. And then what we could also do is put it right on the front page, you know, just a direct link, especially right now with the budget season, you know, the next 2 months, that please click this, you know, link to the school board website, you know, page. So yeah, that's pretty easy to do. Yeah, Gail does a lot of the work, and I do some of the work as well too. Yeah, just give us a list, we'll put it up.
Sounds
Awesome.
good.
Thank you. I think that's
Jeremy.
gonna be efficient. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just wanted to just say that, you know, Wayne, that's awesome, but if that's not what you need to spend your time doing, or Gail, you know, I'll back up Selena on helping with that. So appreciate trying to do it, but I can think of things that you might need to be doing other than just copying, you know, like putting stuff on there. So that's awesome, but you know, I can back up Selena if you need help doing it.
Yeah, if any of you want to jump on the Google site, I'm happy to give you permission to be able to jump on that too. And then you can just manage your own page as you'd like. I have definitely no problem sending over that to you as well. Just let me know.
Okay. So any other ideas for getting information out there? All right. I think that's our agenda. Dan, should we talk to Peter before we go into executive session and talk contracts?
Yeah, Peter, you said you needed.
What are your
for the
names
last
that you need,
minutes?
Peter, before we let you go?
Oh, yes, thanks. The previous minutes, there were 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 people who did not give their full names who were in attendance. If I sent you the list, perhaps you could complete that and I'll put it in before approval.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine to send us an email and we'll plug in the names if you have first names.
Okay.
All
You could
right.
approve it now or next meeting, whatever.
Well, next meeting's next week, so it's not that much, not that far away.
Enough for me, won't hurt my feelings. Thanks.
Okay. Well, maybe can we pause just 1 second before we go into executive session? I should have added this at the change to the agenda, but if you'll indulge me, Wayne has not heard anything new about this new state mandates, but I think based on what's happening, everybody got the notice about the 3-4 class. Can Bill or Wayne give us any kind of COVID update on what seems to me, like basically from my point of view, the state's kind of throwing up their hands and saying, we're not going to test anymore. We can't control it. It's gotten out of hand. Is that basically the takeaway from all this? What is the protocol that's coming, do you think, from the state?
I'll speak universally, and my internet's unstable, so let me know if I need to turn off my video. But basically what's going to happen from this point forward is we're going to run test to stay for the remainder of this week, because that's the amount of tests we have. We are going to end test to stay next week. And Doug so eloquently put it, we are going to the personal responsibility COVID section of the second half of January. So the roles of schools are going to change. And basically what's going to happen is if you are unvaccinated and you test positive, or you're unvaccinated and you are a close contact, you're going to be given tests to go home and do basically test to stay at home. And so 5 through 11 are available for vaccines, and Vermont has 58% of 5 through 11 that have decided to get vaccines for 5 through 11. In Marlboro's case, it's basically 5 through 14. Pre-K is not eligible. So our role and our nurses' role is going to be handing out antigen tests and then working with students that show symptoms. But teachers that are vaccinated and are deemed close contacts will have no disruption to their world. There will be no isolation, there will be no quarantine. And students that are vaccinated will have no disruption to their world. And we will be sending form letters of every single class that has a close contact. So for example, the 3-4 class would just get a form letter next week that says somebody in the 3-4 community has tested positive. And if you have symptoms, please stay home. If you are vaccinated and do not have symptoms, we look forward to seeing you at school. And if you are unvaccinated, contact the school nurse and we will give you tests for 5 days, of which you will then show up at school if you test negative. That's the world we're going to go into on the 18th. This is all dependent on all the tests being delivered tomorrow or Friday, which is supposed to happen, and none of our teachers getting actual COVID and having to be out. So I have met with our nurses this week. I'm meeting with all 4 of our nurses tomorrow. I will be drafting a letter that will be sent out to all families. I'm drafting a letter that will be sent out to all staff. And it will be much more eloquent than what I just said, but basically it'll just kind of lay out the new guidelines and how we're going to operate. And it's going to be a wild ride until February break. Wayne might have more for the specific context of Marlboro.
If I had a nickel for every time Bill has said since 2019, it's going to be a wild ride, I'd be very wealthy. Any other questions for Bill? Wayne, go ahead. You got.
I don't really have much to add other than that. We'll continue to follow what we currently have until we get this memo from the state that basically says what Bill just said. We are doing test to stay tomorrow. We're doing it on Friday. We do have a long weekend, and if we do not see anything, we'll be doing test to stay on Tuesday and continue to do that as well. We're also just going to help folks, meaning that if somebody wants help with a test, we will help them. And we will help support them like we always have. And what I mean by we is I should take we out and place Sarah's name in, because Nurse Sarah is the one that really keeps us all safe, keeps the engine running, and is just, an absolute rock star when it comes to this. I do, in regards to that, Sarah was in today and she helped us through this recent case, and she was not even contracted for today. So again, this is another wonderful example of how hard Sarah works and how much I very, very much appreciate her. She is absolutely wonderful.
Thanks, Wayne. Dan? Oh, you're clapping, Dan, not raising your hand. Jude's got a hand raised.
Jeremy can go for, he had his hand up before I did.
Sorry, Jeremy, didn't see you.
Thanks. No, so I just wanted to share, I tested positive on Sunday afternoon. And, my household has the bus director, and we know that buses are short-staffed. So I would say that Sarah Sherritt must have clocked at least 3 hours just on my family, which is like, we were people that didn't want to take up her time. So I can't imagine what she's actually doing. I know everyone agrees, and I know that Wayne will let us know when the time comes, but this is like the third time that we've had a scare. It just happens to be real this time. So like, I don't know how many of you have had that interaction with her, but I just can't believe, I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm sending this to her on Sunday, but we have to. And she was awesome. And that was for new information, as well as happily sending information that I probably should have already known, but in the moment didn't have it in front of me. So also, I've got a bit of brain fog right now, so please forgive me. I also just wanted to ask Wayne and Bill what you think about your relationship in your positions to the teachers' unions response to the change in protocols, and then just curious about like what is an appropriate, I guess I want to support our teachers, and I'm wondering how you feel about that response, if that represents the local teachers at our school. I assume it does. I'm so sorry, Patty, I should have directed that towards you first, but I'm just curious about the relationship between the teachers and these changing things, and how, regardless of, maybe we can't control everything, but how can we support teachers who've been asked to do so much in getting some, what sounds like some bad news, really bad news this week? Thanks.
I think how to help the teachers would just keep doing those little things. There's nothing you really can do for the teachers, but those little things. We got sushi this week from Shinla. You don't know how that lifts our spirits. We were like skipping down the hallway with this little box of sushi. Just those little things really lifts us up. It's our second year, and like Nurse Sarah and Wayne, we're hanging in, but those little things really help us. Was that your question?
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome, because those are things that we can actually do. But I was also just, there was an article that a lot of us had seen about the Vermont Teachers Union being very upset about the change in protocols. And so I just wanted to know, how we can address that.
Yeah, I'm not part of the union,
Okay.
so I don't keep up to date on that.
Thanks. Okay, Bill and Wayne, if you have any ideas.
I met with the union today, the global union, the entire WCSU union representatives, and they communicated to me that their relationship with their principals and their nurses is what sustains them. And they understand the Vermont NEA's disappointment in the 5/15 dropping of the change. But they also are incredibly prescient and understanding of the context that everything's local here in Vermont. And so, yes, that's a statewide situation, but they trust their principals, and they trust their nurses, and they trust their colleagues, and they feel very supported in the WCSU, that no matter what the situation is happening, that they are going to be supported, be protected, and to operate in a safe environment. So I only heard global good things today.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And then also, just if there's any way that, the school board can respond to any, I mean, I'm assuming, again, so much comes down to just a few people in such a small community. So, I'm just anxious and to support anything regarding Nurse Sarah or backup for Nurse Sarah, or for you, Wayne, or just like whatever pieces. I'm sure it really changes things when Gail or obviously Wayne and Sarah are out. So I think that, I mean, hearing that teachers could use some Shinla, like that's awesome. I love fundraising stuff like that. And there's another committee that's maybe more appropriate, but I just think that it's important that when someone else gets sick or whatever, we have the support there that you need.
Thanks, Jeremy. I agree. Jude.
Would, Bill, are the kids dismissed immediately upon, the identification of are they informed immediately? Like if that were going to happen in the middle of a day, at the beginning of a day, would they then be asked to leave, or is that established the next morning? Like does Sarah do that?
Yeah, students would not leave during the day, and we
Okay.
would inform all families that a positive case was in that family community. And
Okay.
then we would provide the appropriate testing resources.
Okay, get that. And then are families verifying a negative test? Is there are they saying we did it, it was negative? Is there a little sheet coming in with the student?
There's
Like
no
we were doing
attestation.
that with
No.
temperatures at one point? No, okay.
No, it is,
Oh, honor
we
system.
tested negative and we're coming to school.
It's just honor system. It's presumed if the child is on the bus, that has happened. Okay, thanks.
It's a really good question, Jude, because every time I was out in Bennington getting my results, I would take a picture and send it off to Gail and Sarah. So, I mean, we don't have, I guess we can't do that because we have to follow state policy. We can't institute our own policies on that, can we, Bill?
Well, I mean, you're talking rapid antigen tests. So you would have to then institute a policy that would go through your policy procedure. You would have to have it reviewed by an attorney. And then you would basically say that we need documentation. You're basically taking a picture of, a pregnancy test that says I am not pregnant. And
No,
it's a COVID test, Bill. That's a different test.
no, but I mean, it's the same size and you know what I mean?
no.
They're not
no.
interchangeable though,
What
just
if
to be
it was-
clear for everybody listening, they're not interchangeable.
They are not interchangeable.
What if it was just I don't know if we could do this, but what if it was just a box? It's not, you don't have to give me proof, but it's more than just, we're assuming, it's like a check, like, oh, check, you didn't have that, is that possible for us to do at a school level?
If you want
would-
to go
I don't know
through
if we
the
want
legal
to.
process, sure.
Okay, and the legal process is a timeline of how long?
You would write a policy, then you'd send it to the attorney, and then the attorney would review it and give it back to you. And then you would decide if you want to warn it, and then you would wait 10 days, and then you would adopt it. And by that time, we're in February, and we're in a different world.
Yeah, that's a good point, timeline wise. But we do have a policy committee. I'm sure Selena's really excited to take that on. Selena's shaking her head. Okay, any final questions on COVID status for Marlboro before we entertain a motion to enter executive session for contracts?
Well, I guess I'm just wondering, like, do we need to, I mean, I hear like Jude asking a question, could we do this? And I wonder if whether at our next meeting, if not tonight, do we want to have a conversation about whether or not we want to do that, other than just asking, is it, I mean, or are we, I guess, I mean, I'll just be transparent. My concern is not so much, the individual responsibility argument is just really is what you hear a lot. And Bill and I hang out in Dover a lot. We see a lot of people that aren't from our state who behave the way that they feel individually responsible to behave. And our economy needs that. And so I understand it's complicated, but this is still the #1 cause of death in our state, and it is affecting people that are not vaccinated. And it is affecting people who are immune compromised, which includes a 34-year-old woman, cancer survivor, who lives in Townsend, that affects people with rheumatoid arthritis, no matter what age. I mean, there's a lot of kind of narratives going on right now that I think are positive for the general wave of public health. And I'm just also wondering in what way are we responsible? I think we are in some way responsible for transmission to individuals in our area, whether they are susceptible due to their own choices or not. And so it seems to me that the policy, and I'll tell you that some of those people feel abandoned. And so we're just responsible here for our own community. But there are people in our community and people affiliated with people on this call whose lives are actually in the balance of this thing that a lot of people have just written off as, it's the new flu, let's just all share a COVID lollipop. That came from the mouth of a local physical therapist the other day. And it just makes me sad that we're missing that as we use data so much, but the data about vulnerable people is not improving along with it. And, I'm a vaccinated person who has a moderate plus symptoms to what we assume is the Omicron. So another thing, narratives about, oh, well, Omicron is a cakewalk. And yeah, I'm fine, but I'm also healthy and have someone making me all my meals, and we have a house big enough that I can separate myself. So it's just my question is, do we have responsibility to talk about it some more before we just move on?
So Jeremy, I think I want to say 2 quick things in response to that. One is, I agree with Bill. The timeline for that conversation is going to take way too long with lawyers and legal review and the board gathering together on a timeline that's going to fit, because the way things changed now from just 2 months ago when we were going to be right to antigen testing in the school, test to stay. I feel like we'd be behind the curve. We would have had to have started this process in December. But secondarily, I know that your community that you're mentioning, I think I'm going to point to Wayne. I think that families are being really good about keeping their kids out if they're sick in any way before they get their tests done. And am I just assuming, Wayne, or in a percentage wise, is it a high percentage of families? Do we feel like we are a safe community, or our families are being respectful and safe?
I do. I do think. I think it's one of the benefits of working in our community right now is that we do have very trustworthy, honest community members, so I sympathize with other folks that are not in communities like ours. But when it comes to our community, I feel like we have a high level of trust. We have a high level of honesty. 1 second, please. My dog is here. I apologize.
You have a puppy in the office? Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. And there are pros and cons to just especially when children are involved, around honesty and because they are we the adults are making decisions. However, they are in the middle of our decision making, and I always try to be respectful and to create the best environment for them. So if we are being trustworthy, the adults with each other, then our children are just so much better off. Now, if we're just dealing with adult to adult, I think we can be a little bit more straightforward and a little bit more cautious. But in the end, it's always the child that's, sounds pretty. There goes my glove. So I just want us to be cautious of that. The other piece, though, that I did hear from Jeremy, though, is that, yes, I feel like Marlboro is very unique. I feel very supported by many of the community members, but we may not see that outside of Marlboro. And like you were saying, Jeremy, is that somebody in Dover could very well affect somebody in Newfane or Marlboro could affect somebody in Halifax, what have you. That's where I think it comes to the state again, where the state has to step up and say, hey, listen, we need to create a policy for the whole state. And unfortunately, they're unwilling to do that, as we now know, which is now putting all of these towns in these situations. And it's unfortunate, it's inequitable. And again, I'm just glad I'm here right now. So I'm sorry for the long-winded answer, but I do feel that there's a lot of trust in this town.
Thanks, Wayne. Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to enter executive session for contracts.
So move.
Dan motions. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Selena. All right.